I decided to add some walnut binding. Top of the base is going to be walnut. The head plate's going to be walnut. So I bought some walnut binding from Exotic Wood, and it comes like this. And this is obviously very, very thick. This is a little over 1/4 inch thick, and it's 1 inch wide. Initially I thought, well, I don't need it that wide nor that thick, so I was going to rip it down the middle. And then I figured, well, I can probably resaw that. But then I realized it's about the right thickness for the fretboard. A little bit higher. So we rip it into strips. So this is some walnut. I'm going to cut it into some thin strips for binding. It's would normally be used this way. It's quite thick, so I think this is the way to do it. I'm going to set my fence about 1/8 inch from the blade, and maybe a little more. This fence does not go where you put it when you put it, which is kind of annoying. This light's the most annoying light in the world. What were they thinking? Okay, it's kind of staying where it should be. Alrighty. Not sure why I was grabbing that way. That was rather odd. Didn't cut as smooth either. Let me try one more. I'll take it from this side. That one was much nicer. And the middle one was kind of funky. So after ripping into strips, I end up with this. And this will make the neck a little wider. One reason I decided to do this was I decided to make the fretboard slightly wider than it was. I had it at was 2 inches and 3/4, or 1 3/4 inches, which is a little narrow. I kind of like them that way for a 5-string. But this brings it to 2 inches. So it's about 1/8 inch on each side. I'm going to adjust on the other end. I have to make the fretboard slightly narrower so it stays within our parameters. But that worked rather well with ripping the binding. So I have to measure about what I have, and I'll have to probably take a tiny bit of wood off the width of the fretboard. I haven't decided, but now that I have the binding, I can start doing the inlays once I have the fretboard at its proper width. Nice thing about these is they can be used for neck laminations. So they're nicely, a lot of them are nicely quarter sawn when you look at them from the edge. So it makes a nice neck lamination wood. So after a little debating with myself, I decided I don't like the color of the walnut binding against the Pau Ferro. It's too similar. I have a little maple stripe in there, but it's just, it would go nice. The walnut would go nice maybe with a ebony or rich light fretboard, but I don't think it goes well with the Pau Ferro, which is a very nice figured piece of wood. Then I thought maybe I could do some Purple Heart, but I think I'm gonna just not do the binding. It was just an idea, and also, you know, I have the black and white stripes under the fretboard, which you're gonna see on the edge, so the binding would have obscured that and made that work kind of moot. So after a little bit of debate, going back and forth about the binding, initially I wanted to do this binding. You can see it's walnut with a little maple veneer, and I thought the contrast was too low compared to the Pau Ferro. I tried putting a little Watco on it, and it darkened up a little, so I think that'll look kind of nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The other reason I was doing it was I made the end of the fretboard 1.5 inches, which is on the narrow side, but very similar to like an Ibanez sound gear bass. I have a 5-string Ibanez, which I very much like the neck on it. So I decided to make it a little bit wider. This binding is a little less than 1/4 inch. So the whole thing comes out to 2 inches now. But I don't want the other side to be that much wider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back to my tapering jig, and I'm going to remove this much thickness from the end here, but I'm leaving it the way it is here. So I'm going to do a very slight taper coming up. Then I will glue this binding on. So that'll be the next step. A lot of times when I'm working on instruments like this, let's get into that tape. It's kind of, you know, this whole process. I mentioned it on the last bass, on the Blackbird bass series. A lot of that was very kind of improvised, very improvisational. You know, I decided I had a rough idea what I wanted to do. Nothing was totally written in stone. And, you know, as I went along, I made some changes and some adjustments. Then if I make another one of those, I will follow that formula. So, that's the next step. So next we're going to take this to the tapering jig and taper it. Here we are at the tapering jig. I've shown this before. I just butt it up against the blade like that. What I probably should have done with this was put a runner to fit into the slot on the table saw, which didn't occur to me at the time. So, you know, when I do it, I have to keep it pressed up against the fence, but it works fine. Make a little room here. My vacuum's in the way. So I'm going to I'm going to put the fretboard. I scribed a line in here. And on this side, I'm just going to have it flush. And it's going to take that much off on that side, on a taper. Now, one thing I like to do on this, because it's not in the slot, I have a thin rip jig, which I use to press it up against there, so you can't move away from the fence. Yeah, like that. And that should do it. Now I just have to turn it around and do the other side. This is why there should be I should put a runner. I will do that soon. There's our retapered fretboard. Same width over here. And a little bit thinner down here. Now I'm going to glue the binding on. Okay, so I was getting ready to put some wax paper down here. I was getting ready to glue these on, and then I realized two things. One is I need to cut the end of the fretboard off because I'm going to miter the binding around it. And I didn't do that yet. The other issue is I have a very slight warp in the fretboard, which is probably due to the veneers I glued on the bottom. So it got unbalanced, it warped a little. It's not a big deal as far as the instrument's concerned. Once it's glued down, it'll be fine. But obviously I need that to be flat when I'm gluing the binding on. So I think what I'm probably going to do is take some tape, because I'll use the tape to tape it. I'm going to put the tape in from the bottom I'm going to raise this up a little so I can get a clamp on there. I'm going to clamp it down just to hold it flat. But right now I have to cut the end of the fretboard off before I start gluing the binding on. So that'll be the next step. I'm using this radius block just as a kind of a straight edge because it's radiused. I have a mark on here already. Now to cut it. Fit. Trying to see if I have a little block to support it on a right angle, and this will work. That's nice and clean. Next thing I'm going to do is put a little bevel on all these fret slots, because I will not be able to do this once the binding's on. It just helps the fret seat a little better, because the bottom of the fret tang has a little bit of a bump. And I forget to do this sometimes. And that's all 25 slots. Now, time to glue the binding on. So, because I have to clamp this down, I'm going to do this. I just raised up on a little piece of wood. It's not exactly binding tape, but it should work fine. That's a little too short. The last time I did wooden binding on a fretboard was rosewood binding, and I had to it had curved edges, and I had to bend the binding, which at this thickness was not the easiest thing. And I actually used a hair curling iron, believe it or not, as an impromptu bending iron, and that actually worked fine. I didn't crack the rosewood or anything. That was 30 years ago. So like with a lot of things that you do, it's like, well, I don't remember exactly how I did things. You know, you kind of do them one way one time and do them another way another time. The other thing I'm concerned about is, excuse me. Let me drink something. The other thing I'm concerned about is I'm going to have glue getting into the fret slots. So I guess once the glue sets up a little bit, I'm going to go in and scrape it out with some kind of a thin object. I'm just going to use this clamp just to get the fretboard flat. Off camera, I tried to do it with a couple of neodymium magnets, but that didn't work. I'll extend that past a little bit on this end. You can't see that end, can you? And then after it's glued on, I'll cut the excess off and do the miters. But this is how we're going to start. I'm just doing kind of a dry fitting here, because I have to navigate around this clamp. Excuse my voice. I don't know why it's got a frog in my throat. Okay, that's working. Of course, I left the lid off my glue. It's okay. Where's that end? I'm just going to mark off here where it ends so I don't have to use more glue than I need to, because that's not going to be serving any purposes. I also don't want to put too much glue on, because like I said, I don't want to get a whole lot of glue into the fret slots, but you know, you don't want to starve the joint either, as they say. We don't need it up here. That's good. I'm not getting a lot of glue into the fret slots, so that's most excellent. Because obviously it would be difficult. Oh, there's a lot of glue in the fret slots. Why did I do that? It would be difficult to clean the slots with the binding in a way, but it's not impossible. There's one side. Wipe my hands on my pants. That could be a little tighter. I might add some clamps to this setup. Tape could have been a little longer, but I believe I believe it'll serve the purpose just fine. Wide enough? Just barely. All the bigger ones. I've had these forever. They don't get a whole lot of use. I know there's more than that for the big ones. I don't see them. No. That was kind of startling. You stay on there. Let's see, do these plastic ones open wide enough? No. These are deceptively strong. The springs in them. Yeah, that won't work. This is just to make sure I got a nice tight clamping on it. And that should do it. I'm gonna add one more just for the fun of it. Okay, that should do it. Now we're just gonna let this dry a bit. And I'm gonna go in, once I can take the tape off, I'm gonna go in and make sure that binding's all the way down. Go in and clean out the fret slots. The binding is pretty flush. Maybe not with that one. The binding is pretty flush with the fretboard, so I really don't have to do much as far as leveling it. That one clamp wasn't helping any. So that'll do it. Okay, that's it. Now we just wait for the glue to dry. So here's the fretboard. I still have to scrape the binding flush. I got it flush on the bottom. One thing I wasn't thinking about when I cut the end of the fretboard off was that I'm using a truss rod with a wheel, which I don't normally do. I've always done the truss rod on the other end. And I was going to make a little cutout for that, but I cut this piece of the fretboard off. So I'm going to reattach it. And then there's going to be binding down on the end. And yeah, then I'll make the little cutout. So I have to think that through. I wasn't thinking when I did that, but I should be able to get that back together pretty invisibly. And then cut the little notch out for the wheel. So that'll be the next thing we're gonna do. But this is basically the binding. I'm gonna cut it off about to here. And then, which is right at the end of the fretboard, and then make the little notch. So that's gonna be the next thing I'm gonna do. And then we'll start getting the neck ready.